Welcome everyone to episode 17 of the series. Can you believe it? Listen, let's jump right into this. As in many of the other videos, even before this series, I will go back in history for thousands of years so that we can understand the end of it again. Understand the beginning, and it helps you understand the ending. And the ending of this is going to be at SkinWalker Ranch. And we're going to get there much quicker than the ending, but let's start where I think this all began, and it's going to be a fascinating ride. So guys, just hold on. You're looking at a map, and these are the ice sheets that were over North America. The one to the left was called the Cordillera, and the Greenland ice sheet, and the purple, and in the very center in the bright blue was the Laurentide ice sheet. These things were 2 miles high, and this was during the Ice Age, and guys, it ended at the time of the Younger Dryas. And they're saying, about 11,000 years ago, and the Younger Dryas started changing about 12,600. But something happened, and the movement was very quick. Now, it took a long time for the entire thing to melt, but there were collapses along this wall you see right here below the Great Lakes. And there were massive floods that moved down across the United States, guys, and especially into the top half. Utah was one of them, and the ice walls collapsed, and they had massive amounts of water. They were like ice dams in some locations. And so when those dams cracked and melted and broke, there were floods that pushed debris, rock, gravel, sand, dirt, limestone, all the way south down into Utah, all through this area. And the sheer weight is what geologists speculate caused all of the Great Lakes, possibly the Hudson Bay, because of the weight and the pressure on the surface of the planet. Think about that. Anyway, as it melted, guys, again, you see the mud flows that people call mesas. I'm going to show you a picture of the one right at the triangle that we're talking about at SkinWalker Ranch. Says the Great Ice Sheet of North America, primarily the Laurentide ice sheet, melted away due to rapid climate warming. That may have not been exactly what happened, guys. I think there were some very powerful forces affecting the planet that made it a lot of things shift. Anyway, that began approximately 19 to 20,000 years ago. This massive glacier, which was up to 2 miles thick and covered most of Canada and the northern U.S., retreated over thousands of years, with its final collapse occurring around 11,000 years ago. It says, as temperatures rose, the ice sheet began to melt rapidly, leading to the creation of massive lakes and causing sea levels to rise significantly. They ended up rising 400 feet around the planet. They watched Atlantis sink. They watched the city of Krishna on the coast of India sink below the waves. Florida was 3 times as wide. Anyway, again, 2 miles thick. It says the final remnants of the ice sheet, such as the Barnes ice cap in the Arctic, are still melting today and are expected to disappear within the next few centuries. As the ice sheet retreated, it left behind the Great Lakes and shaped much of the landscape of the Midwest and northeastern North America. The melting ice formed large proglacial lakes such as Lake Agassiz, which broke through ice dams and caused catastrophic floods. The retreat of the ice was not a slow, steady process, but included periods of rapid acceleration, with massive icebergs breaking off and surging into the North Atlantic Ocean. Guys, that's why I'm saying that mesa. Let's go and look at that picture as we talk about it. And many of you have watched the series. It's one of the 2 that I watch, and I don't watch TV until I'm tired and I go and get in a bed and I need something to detune with, and I enjoy it. Usually puts me to sleep. This, and I think the Ancient Alien series, that's the type of stuff I enjoy. But anyway, you're looking at a still shot of the triangle at SkinWalker Ranch. Now, you guys are very familiar with it that watch the series, but the ones that aren't, guys, this is looking north. You see the real mountains up here? This is the edge of the Great Mudflow. That's what the mesas are. It's important. And the shelving here, guys, is this happened over 11,000 years ago. You've got natural erosion and all kind of different things happening. And right here is basically where they are drilling. And what's important about that is they've located an object using ground penetrating radar called LIDAR and different machines that do the very similar things, different techniques. But anyway, they found a craft buried, or I say craft because they pulled out pieces after drilling up inside there, and they found a craft about 400 feet long, buried in the mesa. I think 470 or 420 feet deep back into this mud flow. It was trapped there. Now, let me show you an image of that LIDAR that I'm talking about. Most of you have seen it, but again, I'm not going to show you any video from there, and I hope this one image, I'm not even sure if it came from there, would get me in trouble. So I got to be very careful. But again, you're looking at, let me tell you something. It's so obvious when you look at it, especially when they fly the drones around. But if you were to take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with gravel and dirt and some rocks, you get it real thick, where it just run out. You pour it on the green section of lawn in your front yard, right? Real thick, where it just finally, stays about 2 or 3 inches thick as it dries. That's what you're looking at happen here 11,000 years ago. Now, why would the craft be there? Let's go to that LIDAR image. And what they've done, guys, is this is the image right here. This is deep, over 400 feet back into the mesa. I think the top of it is about 40 foot from the surface, and it's about 400 feet long. And the way they describe it, if you watch the show at all, is that it appears to be debris around it that would be very similar to an airplane crash, the crash site, the impact. And this thing would have had to hit during the mud flow when it was still wet and be buried there. But again, we're looking back into the time of the Sumerians, the flights, the Anunnaki, and the stories that we've read from the Sumerian text and the tablets. But here's what they did, and I think they've actually put another borehole here now. GPR is ground penetrating radar, and they drill these holes beside it to insert instruments like other types of radar and frequency and things like that to try to bounce off this thing and get a better look at it, and without harming it. But if you've watched some of the series, you've seen them drill into it and just wear the drill bit out, and they bring about little pieces of ceramic tile. That's the key to me knowing it's a craft, because they match the same tiles but are much more sophisticated, and man has never created them this sophisticated. But they are the same thing as the heat shield that's around like the space shuttle and other spacecraft. But they couldn't drill into it. But they did get fragments in their drillings. And the fragments, I'm not saying it came from the main craft. It could have been part of the scattered debris field. Those are the ones they tested at the University of Utah and found out that they were semiconductors that when put in liquid nitrogen, it just kept boiling. In other words, it can absorb infinite heat. Also, it would shield from heat in the atmosphere. It would also allow a cryogenic situation to where it could operate below the visible eye spectrum, guys. And you've got different bands of wavelength. We, with our human eyes, only see a very small. You got the infrared both above and below. And so the semiconductor with that amount of heat absorption and release capabilities could easily handle what's called cloaking. Anyway, this ship crashed. During these events, there were extreme electrical lightning storms. Could have had to do with something that created that 11,000 year ago sudden rush that created this mesa, this mud flow that's hardened over 11,000 years, and you still see the big sandstones. Well, they have continue to, I guess, poke the bear in a way. Now, remember, it's emitting a signal when they attempt to drill or if they attempt to fire rockets or whatever they're doing at 1.6 hertz. Now, another thing that tells me that that's a craft is because that is the signal at 1.6 that NASA uses to communicate with all of its satellites and any spacecraft. And it's used worldwide as the space frequency. And it appears to be a beacon. Now, usually it appears when they're trying to do, again, an experiment, something loud that lights up the night, scares the cows to death, and all of that, if you've watched it. But there's something going on here that beyond what we're seeing. Now, let's go back in time just a moment. I just wanted to give you a refresher on this part, or maybe the first time you've seen it, and I wanted you to realize you're looking at a mud flow and not a mountain. And guys, this one is not as clear. It's a different LiDAR scan, but you can see a little bit more of the detail in the center here. Maybe the reason it's 400 feet long is because it's two objects. I don't know. But again, this one is not as clear, but they have went back with both ground penetrating radar, surface LiDAR, and different instruments throughout this entire thing. And what kind of amazes me, and maybe it's a reason, just like we can't get all information that, certain scientists have, is that maybe they understand what I'm about to tell you, and they just can't get there at the time. We're going to look at it. Don't go anywhere. But before I go, I want to mention this before I forget it. They've also indicated with various experiments, probably ad nauseum, 20 or 30 different techniques, and they've indicated that there seems to be a dome over the entire area. Right in here at the surface is the triangle, but this dome, it goes out 2,000 feet in each direction from the center and 2,000 feet up. And some of their ground penetrating LiDARs and things, guys, are indicating that it goes underground. That's what you're seeing. It's like a force field. Every time they try to shoot a rocket up, it bounces off of something. Or if they try to fly a drone through it, sometimes it will just stop it. Or if the helicopter that Brandon's brother owns or drives, it'll throw it around like a toy inside this thing. It's a force field. And all their instruments are drained instantly. More than likely through that semiconductor quantum inductance that's inside this ship. More than likely because it contains crystals that are probably hundreds of thousands of years old. We know at least 11,000 years ago. Anyway, so there's a shield that's being emitted around it, just like you would if a highly advanced spacecraft wanted to protect itself. Now it's still emitting, after 11,000 years, a 1.6 signal. Is it an SOS? Is it a beacon to the other ships that did not collapse? And we're about to get there. And this is a very good different angle right here of that particular mesa. You can see where the floods came through, the channels that were washed. You can see the edge of the mud flow much better. This is underground again, just put into it as an illustration. So you got a huge dome, a huge shield. They don't talk about that. And if I thought they would listen, I would try to explain it to them. Maybe some of them will look at this. Again, maybe they already know it. Now let's go back in time again to the time of these floods. And a different flood, not a different flood, just a different area of the planet during the same flood that was called the deluge. Now, a lot of people say, well, Zachariah Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet and many other books, and by the way, maybe 12 years ago, guys that have been around, I did a maybe 10-part series in going through The 12th Planet and a few of the other ones. Anyway, A lot of people think he's just making it up, but it's the same group of people that took the Book of Enoch out because of that technology, and they want it to. They don't want us to have any type of knowledge. That's the same group that took the books out of the Bible that want to downplay his books. Let me say that. But book 1 of the Earth Chronicles, they talk about this deluge or the great flood. It says the description of the Anunnaki craft lifting like birds during the great flood is most famously detailed in that 12th planet book. It talks about the Epic of Gilgamesh and the flood in the Sumerian text describing the gods' retreat to their orbiting spacecraft as the waters rose. Remember the wars, the spaceports all through that area, the Pyramid Wars? And what they called them, the way Sitchin translated it, was Shem, which meant shuttlecraft. Ascended, they appeared to the observers below like birds or flies fleeing the rising catastrophe. Remember, a group was saved not by Enlil, but by Enki. Now hang in here with me. Remember, Enlil's group went in and destroyed some of the crystals inside the Great Pyramid, but they kept many. And of course they already had the technology above their ships, but they mainly wanted to prevent the tribes of Enki from having the technology and the weapons, they call them, right? So they already had the technology above their ships and or aboard their ships, and they used the crystals for navigation, energy, power, shields. You hear me? Shields. Anyway, so as they lifted off, it wasn't just from there. This wave ended up engulfing the planet. And the way they got the warning, if you've ever read the series, if you haven't, it's very interesting. And understanding some of the technology in there, not all of it, it made a lot of sense to me. But anyway, the way the warning came and the way that they were prepared for this liftoff like birds watching the flood come, guys, is the fact that they had scouts in Antarctica. And they communicated via these crystals. They had that power probably ship to ship, station to station. And you have, remember the first radios, guys? We built them in school, and I was in college a long time ago, but you know, the first ones had crystals, and then that evolved into the CB radio, and you had 40 channels. I think each one probably had its own crystal. And now it's different technology, silicon now, but a different format. Anyway, they've always been used. So the ships had them. Some of the ships may have had more important crystals, like you would say like an arc or a main crystal, the main knowledge crystal, the main one that had all of the information, the most important ones, things like that aboard these ships. And so the warning came from Antarctica that the ice sheets there were also collapsing, and that a great wave was headed from the south towards the equator and that would eventually cross the entire planet. But from the story, the warning came from the scouts on the Antarctic ice sheets. It got to the people there, which we call Iraq and Iran in that area, and they knew it was coming. They had the ships ready, just like you're sitting in a jet, waiting for your time to leave. You know what I'm saying? They were ready. They knew it was coming, and it was coming fast. And they watched it just as, and that's where the flood of Noah comes in. There was nothing the people left behind could do, except Noah and his group. Same thing in this story. You had the same story, and I wouldn't doubt the stories intertwine more than you think. But again, this communication via the crystals from the Antarctic ice sheets to the Middle East was because of quantum entanglement. It happens instantly because of the crystals, and they are using them in that technology now. Now, you look at it, Sitchin describes the Anunnaki leaders gathering at the spaceport. Remember the spaceports in the video series we did a few months ago? And boarding their whirlwinds to watch the destruction from Earth's orbit. Guys, and the descriptions go further in these books. In the Earth Chronicles series, Sitchin describes the Anunnaki's bird crafts as highly sophisticated, multi-stage vehicles capable of both atmospheric flight and deep space travel, quantum jumping, which basically describes a time hole. Mu and Sim, the bird craft, Sitchin reinterprets the Sumerian word Mu, typically translated as name, as a technical term for skyborne vehicle. Again, they're going to go against any information coming from this time because it doesn't fit their political or religious narrative. And if you remember in that series that I did long ago, of the Lost Book of Enki, the crafts used specifically during the flood are called whirlwinds. These were smaller, highly maneuverable craft that allowed the Anunnaki to hover and observe the rising waters before docking with their larger orbiting platform. This larger orbiting platform is very important and where I'm going with all of this. Again, you're saying, BP, have you forgot about SkinWalker? No, I haven't. This is getting there, and it's going to be even better when we do because of what I'm showing you. And guys, some of these ground stations, think about it, it's bailback, called the landing zone. But anyway, you had the space stations and motherships. This is important. The Anunnaki utilized a large orbiting space station as a relay point between Earth and their home planet Nibiru. The birds that lifted from the flood were moving from Earth's surface to this permanent station to wait out the disaster. Every religion on Earth talks about the sky gods and their return, just like we talk about the return of Christ from the sky. Now, that message from the Antarctic, just going back for a moment, it says it was an alert to the Anunnaki leaders, both Enlil and Enki, warning that the displacement of the ice would cause a global mega tsunami and catastrophic flooding. The evacuation says this specific data allowed the Anunnaki to prepare the spacecraft for an immediate departure from the Earth's surface to wait out the disaster in orbit. Now, we have a lot of things in orbit, space station, and probably hundreds of thousands of satellites. I don't know the current count, but it's a pretty big network. But why is the 1.6 beacon coming from the craft buried at SkinWalker 11,000 years ago? What was on board that craft that would last that long? You remember in the video yesterday I talked about the weight of the pyramids and the granite, how that created an unending piezoelectric voltage. And they took that energy and used it in the crystals of the pyramids, and it was radiated out through the golden cap, which is electricity. It was an electrical device, a high-energy electrical device. Anyway, you look at the mesa. Sandstone is highly quartz. Think about what I'm telling you. And you've got a craft buried 400 feet under that, 40 feet from at the top, but it goes very deep. And so you've got megatons of sandstone around it that you can't hardly drill through. But what is that? That's weight on piezoelectric crystals, tiny crystals in that sandstone and in all of that rock and the sand. And so what's happening, remember the ceramic tile they found that wouldn't quit heating or emitting heat in the liquid nitrogen? This thing would absorb that piezoelectricity through its casing that they had little pieces of they found, and it would keep the batteries and the crystals charged indefinitely, because the crystal, they've admitted the information would last at least 10 million years. That's why you can emit a signal at 1.6, 11,000 years after the burial, and why it still has the energy to create that 2,000-foot round shield you see that frustrates Travis Taylor and his group at SkinWalker. But now I've never seen a man, honestly, in my life that enjoys saying, let's shoot another rocket, more than Travis. And I enjoy watching him. It tickles me. It's like when we were kids, we were going to shoot every rocket we had, on the 4th of July or whatever, right? He loves that. And so maybe they know what I'm telling you. Okay, maybe they do, and it's a good series, and it's going on, and they're doing different things. But maybe because they realize that 1.6 is the spacecraft signal. But that one is buried in an 11,000-year-old mudslide. And because of the weight of that sandstone and that mud and everything that's in that mesa, it has a constant energy supply because of pressure into those pieces of ceramic shielding of that craft, absorbing that heat and that energy. And a piece of that, remember, was of that ceramic, and when they found those little tiny pieces in the drillings, through the screen as they poured the drillings through it, they took it to the University of Utah, and they examined those ceramic pieces. And that's where they put it in the liquid nitrogen. And if you've seen the series, Travis, Brandon, up in Brandon's big circular office, he's the biggest real estate guy, I guess, in the state. But he had 3 or 4, 5, at least 4. And Travis has a NASA background, but he had top people from NASA in there as they talked about it, and they showed the video of the ceramic not stopping dissipating heat for at least an hour. I think they just stopped it. Anyway, not long after that, you saw Travis meet with a scientist from India that teaches at the University of Utah, and he explained to him it's some kind of non-man-made semiconductor made of different layers, definitely machine-made. And it wasn't but the next season that CERN found the cryogenic technology run by Indian scientists to keep the cryos cool for this last run where they're going to shut down June 29th. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Now, just roughly, go back for a second in the timeline. It says Sitchin dated the deluge to roughly 11,000 BCE, about 13,000 years ago. This matches the start of the Younger Dryas approximately 12,800 years ago, when Earth underwent a sudden, violent climate shift. Again, there were great electrical storms during that time. The melting ice had The scouts reported that the Antarctic ice sheet was sliding into the sea. Do you realize what displacement that would cause? Causing a massive surge of water. This mirrors the geological evidence of meltwater pulses, where sea levels rise rapidly due to collapsing ice sheets during the Younger Dryas. These pulses are again what form the mesas and force them to evacuate from the Middle East. Now, many different people, not just Sitchin, they're proponents of the Younger Dryas impact hypotheses that point to channel scablands in the Pacific Northwest as evidence of this massive water movement. The water scored bedrock as deep as 850 feet in a matter of days. Think Grand Canyon. The black mat layer, specific layer debris known as the Younger Dryas boundary, or the YDB, or black mat, has been identified at over 50 sites worldwide. This layer contains impact-related materials like magnetic microspherules, nanodiamonds, and platinum. That's what it's, so they know where it went, how fast it went. And guys, look up the channel scablands. I've looked at pictures of that. It's amazing. Sudden rush that created the mesas. And a ship was caught in it via the electric storms. And why would a ship be there when we're talking about the Middle East and Antarctica? What were they here for? What did they want? What does the man still want now, the noise makers that run the alien tech? They want gold. How much gold was in that section of Utah? But a couple things happened. You had a ship crash that was part of this section, but there was another group there that were not mining. The Hopis, which is not the proper name, but they tell of the Spider Woman that led them via her craft from mesa to mesa and got them to the ant people underground and saved them from the flood as they followed in their canoes. That may not be verbatim, guys, but look it up. They called her Spider Woman. Now, she relates back to the head scientist of the Anunnaki tribe. And Anu is another word, that's where they got the word, ant, A-N, people. Now, I've talked to a Hopi about this. Sorry, I don't remember the exact name. Someone help me with that. And they didn't call the 16 disc I saw flying shields. That's just our name for it. They had another name for them that I saw that came down over me 100 feet and wing waved me because they knew I was coming, because of 3 months of videos with me telling the world I was coming there to see, to look for these craft. Now, I'm going to leave this section. We're going to get down to Spider Woman here just a minute, but Southern Reach and there's evidence of this global event has been found as far south as Palenque, Chile, 6,000 kilometers from the Northern Hemisphere sites, and Water Crater, South Africa, suggesting that the debris and atmospheric fallout was truly global in scope. In Southeast Asia, the flood is theorized to have submerged Sunderland, now Indonesia, which was once a vast continent. Now it's a nation of islands. But think about this, guys, because that flood did not come from the ice sheets of the Laurentide. This is the flood that came from the Antarctic. So I wonder where they clashed at, somewhere in the equator. If there was a great shaking of the planet, both of the ice caps would have collapsed pretty much at the same time. The warning came from the southern scouts, but again, there were reports of this technology in the area of the mesas. There was gold from California all through the area, guys, Arizona, everywhere. And that's what they were here for. Most of the mines that men dug out are probably remnants of the ancient mines that had to be evacuated because of what was coming. One of the ships didn't make it. Now, let's go back to Spider Woman. Now, no one talks about this, but in my opinion, there was a lady she was the head scientist for the Anunnaki. Ninhursag was her name. She worked directly with Enki. That's the one that wanted to save mankind. Remember Ki, K-I, kindness. He was kind to mankind. Anyway, she worked directly with Enki, the god of wisdom / science, to solve the labor crisis on Earth. And it had to do with genetic engineering and DNA. Remember, the Anunnaki got tired of digging gold after who knows how many thousands of years. And so they did some geoengineering to man, DNA manipulation, and the existing man at that time, and created a different race so the Anunnaki could take a break, basically. But she was the lead geneticist who helped bridge the DNA of the Anunnaki with that of the Homo erectus to create the Adama, the first modern human. She was responsible for the biological well-being of the Anunnaki on Earth and managed the laboratory called the Abzu where the genetic experiments took place. Guys, before the flood, she went to every spot on the planet and got DNA from every pair of animals and plants. Just like Noah took 2 of every kind, not always 2, but a pair of every kind in that area. But he took according to the story, the living creatures. They created a DNA bank aboard the ship that had they wanted all of it collected in case the earth is destroyed, because they knew the beauty of the creation. And who wouldn't? Now, of course, Enlil was tired of mankind and wanted the planet, without that noise, is what he called it. But again, Nursag to me was Spider-Woman. Why would I say that? Because Spider-Woman was in the Four Corners area, through the mesas, all through there, and led the Hopi to the ant people. They stayed underground till the earth calmed down, and they came back out. I was told that, you can read about it, but I was told that by a Hopi elder and told stories about it that aren't written down. Now, again, the Hopi mythology, Spider-Woman was Kokyangwuta. It's the creative force who led the people through the different worlds and taught them the art of survival and weaving. Remember, all nations, all civilizations call these people from space gods, sky gods, but they did. And again, taught them arts of survival and weaving. And it says, just as Ninhursag used genetic weaving to create the first humans in Sitchin's work, Spider-Woman is credited by the Hopi with creating the first people from clay and weaving their lives together. Well, what it talks about is, again, being led from mesa to mesa into the underdwellings like in Derinkuyu, where they survived until the earth was calm enough for them to come back up. Probably generations again. We'll read just a little bit about that. It says, the Hopi believed the Spider-Woman helped humanity survive the destruction of the third world, which was destroyed by a global flood, by hiding them in hollow reeds or underground while the water scored the surface. This mirrors Nurhursag's / Ninta's role in preserving the seed of humanity during the deluge that Sitchin describes, and as in the days of Noah. The ant people, interestingly, the Hopi say the ant people took them into the underground caves during these cataclysms. It says Sitchin fans, but just about anybody that does not stay with mainstream will tell you this, that the Sumerian word for ant is An, A-N, and the Anunnaki, those of An, were the ones with the technology to hide and escape. Just like Ahura Mazda told Yima. Now, I think that was older. I think Derinkuyu was before this time. The reason I say that is because the Ice Age lasted a long time, guys. And during this time we're talking about was during the Younger Dryas, when that started to melt and collapse. But in the story of Mazda and Yuma, in the oldest Sumerian text of all, they were told to go underground because of a long, long winter, lasting years and years and years. And they spent many months or years storing grain in the underground city that would hold 22,000 people, as well as livestock, and it had underground water supplies. And as the snows and the dark winters came upon them, long winters, they survived, just like the Hopis did. But I've done videos on that, and you can look that up, and you can look at the actual pictures of Derinkuyu. Now let's go back to the 1.6 gigahertz signal that comes on all of the meters that the SkinWalker group, Travis and his group, have when they shoot a rocket or do another test. They have all of their graphs set up, and they usually, if it's a rocket or a laser, they're trying to blow up something, scare all the cows to death, then they'll get this 1.6 gigahertz signal showing up on their meters. And again, that's the signal that they use in space, or to contact ground to space. Guys, 11,000 years been buried in the mesa, still broadcasting via the piezoelectric grid electricity through this new technology. But it's ancient technology that man is taking advantage of, just like all of the books of history talk about man looking for ancient technology. And so they have discovered this part of it. Now, let's go back before the group, Brandon and Travis and that group were at SkinWalker. It was a fellow named Robert Bigelow, and he owned it. It was named another ranch from another man. It wasn't Marshall, something like that, but Robert Bigelow bought it. And he, as he sold it, he went into building rocketry and spacecraft and all kind of like an Elon Musk type deal. But he sold it. A lot of people says, well, he didn't find anything, or he found something and buried it back and things like that. But guys, from what I understand, he sold it to get away from it, that it was causing his crew that was there doing some of the search and dig operations and things like that, very severe health problems, radiation sickness. And his wife died of a cancer, and he was just in a state basically like, let's get out of this haunted house. Why would that happen? And it hasn't happened to the group now. Now, Bigelow was heavily tied in with NASA, so was Travis. Possibly the whole scheme, or not scheme, but the whole system of SkinWalker is controlled by that. Either way, guys, Bigelow got out because they were afraid of what was there. And why? Because they may have been doing heavy drilling. There's signs that there was heavy excavation and then recovered over, maybe not cover the entire craft, possibly the top section of it. And there's a segment of SkinWalker where they show via space cameras and technology that area had been, it was not the original outlay of the soil and the rocks. It looked like something had been buried there. And an image of that on the next maps was blurred enough you could tell that it was photoshopped. So Bigelow and his group may have dug up near the top, because that was about 40 feet from what I understand in some of the informational LiDAR and others. So did they hit the top of that thing, man, and that 1.6 became something much more dangerous as a warning signal inside that shield that was already there? They're trying to beacon out, or maybe it isn't maybe it's just the ship's continued crystals, because you think autopilot is something new to these people. If it killed the people on board, but remember the Anunnaki were like the Egyptian king list. They lived for thousands of years. Remember that? Anyway, even the inhabitants did not survive the crash or eventually starve to death or whatever. That the ship can maintain on its own because of the crystals the last 10 million years. You have a constant piezoelectric voltage supply. And the beacon continues. Now, why has it not happened to Travis and his bunch? It has. We've seen one of the guys had to go to the hospital, had the swelling of the brain, remember that? Dizziness and all of that. But these were like gentle taps, probably to what Bigelow's group got, that were really trying to hard drive into it. Because why would they do that? Why, again, goes back to why were the Nazis destroying everything they could to find the ancient technology? Why was a lot of stuff looted in the Middle East? Period. They were looking for ancient technology. So in that sense, they were in a rush to dig, get the technology up, scoop it back up, and get it back to Hitler. You know what I mean, whoever that would be in this case. And anyway, so they were attacking it vigorously. And the technology we don't understand, guys, I'm just touching on. They're not talking about connecting the 1.6 and all of that. That's me. But why else would it happen? Why would the space signal be emitting from the inside the damn Mason? Think about it. And they know this. Anyway, Travis and them have been hit. every time they shoot a rocket up inside that 2,000-mile dome that I was showing you, that like a shield, it veers off to the left or right, or again, you know, it shuts down the drones, it throws the helicopters off, it throws the GPS markings off, it drains everything they got of its electricity like a crystal can, shuts it down. People have to leave out of there. They get this taste of metal in their mouth, radiation. He's getting a gentle tap when Bigelow and them got kicked the hell out. But why would they give him a gentle tap for even fooling with it? Because he may be doing enough via that show, and you and I talking about it, and millions that love to watch it. They're somehow fascinated about the search, that this is how it is exposed, but on its own time, and not by being destroyed in the excavation. What lies inside that ship buried 11,000 years ago? What crystals, what knowledge? And it doesn't need to be dug up and destroyed. But of course, just like Roswell, there will be the same event, the cleanup, right? But this thing is not a downed, let me back that up. They're saying it was a downed spacecraft at Roswell. It wasn't underground or anything. But here we've got one it was almost like the hand of God said, we're going to save this information. But anyway, electrical storm backing up just a hair, buried it into a liquid mud flow. As it hardened, it became a seal, almost a sarcophagus of piezo energy. And it happened to be built to take it. Guys, and if you go back to 2013, just as the pieces of the puzzle that a lot of you have seen, I did the video and we talked about the 16 flying discs, flying shields, but the name in Hopi is Patuvota, if I got that correct. Not flying shield, that's just our name for it, is a crucial piece of the puzzle. In Hopi tradition, they were circular shield-like aircraft used by the gods or spiritual leaders to traverse the sky long before the current world. Guys, and you know where they one of their main areas that they travel was through the mesas and down over Luke Air Force Base, down through that area, across 10, down across the Gila River, and over the area where the Phoenix International Speedway is, and over the Estrella Mountains. The same exact place I was when the 16 craft came over me, low to the ground. That's why I said the NASA files are a joke. 16 glowing bright bronze objects at dark, at night. Wasn't dark. You could see the aircraft incoming and outgoing from 10 different airports, including Luke Air Force Base. And these 16 objects flew over me and my son, who was stationed at Luke Air Force Base, and he was astonished. I was not scared. And they moved like a wing wave. Again, I'd done months of videos talking about going there and in Dulce to look for this type of information. It's on YouTube. Now, the reason I tell you that, guys, is because these have been seen before. You won't see them in any of the released UFO files. It's like magic marker dots and spots, and a couple of them are interesting. But what I saw was up close and in full living color, okay? 100 feet above my head, slow enough to where when they dipped down over me, I could count all 16, and they were weaving out of each other like birds or fish, and I don't know how they were doing it. They were doing it in a wing wave as if they knew I was coming. And if you got that technology, a YouTube video or anything on YouTube or anything on the internet is like a transparent piece of glass. They see right through it. Now, is that what happened in my case? I can't say for sure, but I can say for sure that that technology was here. And when I say highly polished bronze is what they look like, the bottom wasn't a light, it was a glow. This bottom of the circular disc, right above my head. And they're talking about in Sumerian. and Hopi. Bronze was the word used to describe a metal that was golden, reflective, and seemingly indestructible. What else does it say that? It says it in the Old Testament. And so after all that happened, guys, and they didn't leave and go into outer space, because in the book of Ezekiel, and again, we're talking about good angels. People say, oh, BP, they're all fallen, evil, ancient demons. Well, who picked up Ezekiel? What did he say? Wheels within wheels, and celestial beings appearing like burnished bronze. Much like the description of the wheels that moved with incredible speed, didn't turn as they went, just like what I saw. It looked like glowing metal or fire. It didn't look like fire. It looked like the entire bottom hull just had a glow of energy. And it was amazing. But again, so go back for a moment. After the flood, after what they call the deluge, settled, most of the craft that made it were in orbit or on a mothership. Some may have left. The one buried is calling out to that group, letting it know where it's at, or trying to get the energy to know, or to let the group know where it's at, right in outer space. But notice that that bubble only goes up 2,000 feet. And as the SkinWalker group, have done experiments with weather balloons and helicopters going up beyond that, even up to 10,000 feet, that anomaly stops. So and again, they're not talking about this, this is me, is that 2,000-foot boundary the limit of the power that's coming from that ship at 1.6 gigahertz? Now, what would happen? Because remember, the tile absorbs so much energy, the ceramic tile surrounding the craft, that if it was dug down far enough to where especially before sunlight hit it, but what if it was dug up and as the earth rotated around and there was this highly polished bronze object that for the first time in 11,000 years had felt the glow and heat of the sun? It wasn't now just limited to a 2,000-foot bubble, that now it could reach out to where now it could be found. What would be found in it? Could it be gold? Could be. They all operated off crystal technology. Could have been one of the ships of the Spider Woman, the head scientist, the DNA collector. Could it be one of her group? We don't know that. We know we have a craft buried that's emitting a space signal, but it looks like it's only going 2,000 feet. And why, if you notice, during these episodes, and I pay attention to them, and I know some of it's Hollywood. I'm looking past that and through it. But you'll see every once in a while, and this particular area, guys, is not a heavy flight path, but there's sometimes a lot of military helicopters and drones and things like that come through there, and bigger planes, and in some things they're not sure what comes through there. But say if the military wanted it, or some big company that wanted the technology, we don't know who it is, they wanted it, but Bigelow convinced them, don't go there and fool this. You don't want to do what we did, Then they would be watching what Travis and his group came up with. Again, NASA and Travis go way back, I think 30 years, working technology like the ceramic tiles for the space shuttle. That's now keeping CERN cool enough to get to high power before June 29th. Now, I know that I've kind of weaved the story here, but it's something that what I've put together from watching that show and all the years of looking at the different angles along with you guys. So no one's going to tell you this. Maybe I should put it in a book. We'll see. Anyway, guys, this is what I see. This is putting all the pieces that I can together and looking at not just the storyline, but the technology involved and the timeline. God bless every one of you. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a heads up. Be safe.